What's up guys, Justin here with the SketchUpEssentials.com, back with another SketchUp plugin tutorial for you. So we talked a little bit yesterday, we did kind of an introduction to Profile Builder, and one of the things that I mentioned is that you could build smart wall assemblies that automatically infill studs and sheathing and all that other kind of stuff. So we're going to go ahead and walk through how to create one of those walls today. So let's go ahead and just jump into it. So I think what we're going to do is we're going to start off and we're going to go into the assembler dialog. So what you want to do is you want to go into the Profile Builder toolbar and you want to look for this second option that says Assembler Dialog. And when you put your mouse over it, it says this is where you create, edit, and build your assemblies. And so what you're going to do in this section is this is where we're actually going to build our whole wall. And so what you can do in here is you could add things like studs and sheathing and all that different stuff. And in order to do that, it's kind of important to understand the difference between profiles and components. So the way that Profile Builder works is it takes a flat shape kind of like this one and it extrudes it along a path. So when you do this in like a wall assembly or something like that, your top and bottom plate, your framing that lays kind of sideways at the other boards sit on top of, that's going to be a profile. And then the other piece is going to be the stuff that gets copied along that length. So in this case, that would be the studs that run up and down, if that makes sense. Let's go ahead and just kind of walk through it and I'll show you what I'm talking about. So first thing you're going to want to do when you get into the assembler is you're going to want to click this plus button for add new assembly. So this is where you're going to add your entire wall assembly. So you can come in here, you could call it whatever you want. You can just call it wall construction. You can call it whatever you want. You can add a description in here if you want to. So in this case it'll be 2x4s, stud framing, drywall. So we'll start off with that. So first thing you're going to do is you're going to have to add a profile. And so what a profile is, so for this construction, the first thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to add a profile. So the profile is what's actually going to get extruded along the length of your wall. So in this case, the profiles would be the bottom and the top plates of your 2x4 wall. And so what you're going to do is you're going to use items out of the Profile Builder or the Profile Builder dialog. So probably the first thing we're going to want to do is we're going to want to come in here and we're going to want to create a profile. And so that's really easy in Profile Builder. All you have to do is you have to come in here and you just have to draw your shape. So in this case, we're going to draw a box that's going to be 4 inches, 2 inches, and then hit that enter key. And I realize the actual dimensions of a 2x4 aren't 2x4, but for this exercise, it'll be good enough. And so all we're going to do is now that we've drawn our profile, which is what's going to get extruded, we're going to select it, and then we're going to go into the Profile Builder section and click this new profile. And we'll just call this 2x4 plate and hit OK. And you can see what that does is that brings in the shape that you drew as your profile. And I'm going to go ahead and set this so that when you bring this in, basically this little red dot is where when you click, that's where your mouse is going to be. So in this case, for this profile, I'm actually going to do bottom right. And basically what that means is whenever you click, this is going to be your starting point and your ending point for your object. So when I click like this, you can see how this corner and this corner are where it's adding my object in here. So I've kind of set my 2x4 plate as an object in here, or as a profile in here. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go back to the Profile Builder section and you're going to add this as a profile member. So all you're going to do is you're just going to click this plus button and then it's going to give you some options down here for name and profile. You can either come in here and you can pick a profile from your model, or you can just use the assembler dialog in order to do this. So and first thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to save this somewhere. Sorry about that. So you've got your 2x4 plate that you created. Now you're going to go in and you're just going to save it. So, and this will not let you save it in the Profile Examples section of Profile Builder. So you just need to go ahead and put that in whatever folder that you're using. Probably you may just want to create a folder for Profile Builder stuff. So all you're going to do is you're going to come in here and you're just going to call this 2x4 plate. So you go ahead and save it. So now you can come in here And when you open up that folder through this little dialog box here, you can just click this search. You can navigate to that folder, and you can just select that folder. Now what that's going to do is that's going to pull up all the different things in here. So it's basically pulling up my 2x4 plate that I created, and it's also got a sample project that I was doing over here. But we'll just click on this 2x4 plate. And so you select the 2x4 plate object, and then you hit OK. So you can come in here and you can adjust that if you want to, but for this case we're just going to hit OK. And so you can see what that does is that brings in kind of an image of that plate in here. So now your assembly basically consists of that 2x4 plate. So if I was to come in here and click, it would create this 2x4 right here. So that's a good start. And so what we're going to do now is you've got one 2x4 plate that it brings in at an elevation of 0. So what we want to do is we want to add another one. So just click this plus for add profile member, and then just come in here and select the same thing. Select 2x4 plate, hit OK. And then for this one, we actually want to come in here and edit this box that says elevation. So in this case, we're going to want this to be probably 8 foot 4 inches high. So you can go ahead and type in 8 foot 4 inches, and you can see what that does is that gives you a preview of your object. And by the way, you can click on this to refresh it. So now it knows that you have one 2x4 plate at the bottom here. So we could probably just name this bottom plate. And then the second one we could call top plate. And so it knows that you have two profiles in here for your bottom and your top plate. So now if you were to come in here and draw this, you can see how what it does is it draws both your base plate and your top plate, just like this. Now you've basically got an assembly that kind of follows wherever you click, just like that. So that's kind of where we want to start. And sometimes these walls are going to have more like a double top plate. So we'll go ahead and add one more. So, and you can just do the same thing, select this object, and probably give this one an elevation of 8 foot 6. Just like this. And so now when you refresh this, you can see it shows two 2x4s on here. And if you select any assemblies that are in here, there's this little button down at the bottom that says apply assembly attributes. So when you click on it, you can see what that does is that updates your assembly to the new assembly. So now I've got a base plate and I've got two top plates in here. So I have 3 profiles. So we'll just call this top plate number 2, and we're good to go. So now what we're going to want to do is we've got our profiles in here, and so now you've got a shape that'll extrude all the way along your path. Now what you want to do is add some components. And remember, the components are going to be the things that it copies along your path. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to create our component. So just come in here and draw a 2x4. So we'll just type in 2, 4, hit the enter key. And then we're going to extrude that as tall as we want it to be. And actually what you could probably do is you could probably draw this on top of your board just like this. So come in here, draw it in, so 2, 4, just like this, and then you're just going to use the push-pull tool to extrude that up to the bottom of your plate. So now you know you've got the right height in here and you've got it kind of centered. Now you can just drag a box around it. You can right click on it and say make component, and we'll just call this vertical 2x4 stud. And you can see there's a box here that says replace selection with component. Make sure that's checked and click create. So now what we're going to do is we're going to come in here. We can probably go ahead and move this out of the way of our example piece, but you're just going to come in here, you're going to click the plus to add a component. There's a whole bunch of different options in here and everything like that. Don't be too intimidated by that. All we want to do for now is we want to select this pick from model. And so what that's going to do is that's going to turn your mouse into an eyedropper. And what it wants you to do is it wants you to pick a component. So in this case, the component I want to pick is this 2x4 stud. But you can see how if I move my mouse over these objects, it's not going to work because these aren't components. So you're basically telling it we want to take this object when I click on it, and we want to make that a part of our assembly. Just like this. So you can see how now what this is doing is this is repeating your 2x4 stud along the length of your wall, just like this. So now if you were to come in here, you were to select your assembly by single clicking on it and then clicking the little apply attribute option, what it's going to do is it's going to add a couple studs, and you can see how they're not quite in there the way that we want them yet, but we're going to go ahead and adjust that. And so there's a couple different things on here that I want to talk about real quick. The first is the spacing. So the spacing is basically how much space it puts between your different objects. So you can say you want framing every 18 inches if you want. And then if you click out of that box, it's going to update your object just like this. And we can single click on our object and click apply. And you can see what that does is that spaces these objects at 18 inches along your face. So you can set your spacing in here. You know, if this was 24-inch stud framing, you could go ahead and apply that. But you can see how what that's doing is that's repeating this shape along the length of your wall. So it'll space these at 24 inches, and you can say you can space things either from the end or from the middle, but it goes ahead and automatically spaces these things. But you can see how these aren't exactly right. You can see how they're not quite tall enough. They're not actually sitting on top of our board. So what we want to do is we want to come in here and we want to set the up-down offset. So you want to set, and remember, basically what this is saying is, okay, it's going to start this at 0 inches high in this object. Well, you've got a 2-inch bottom plate here, so they're 2 inches too short. So all you want to do is you want to set your up-down offset to 2 inches. And then if you come in here, you click on this, and then you apply the attributes, you can see how now your 2x4s are actually up 2 inches and sitting on this base plate, just like this. So now we're pretty close to what we want with the framing. The only problem that we have here is you can see how it's putting this end stud past the end of your bottom plate like this. So all we're going to do is we're going to adjust this left-right offset a little bit. So you can see how it's off by about 2 inches. So we'll just set our left-right offset to 2 inches. Oops, that's not what we want at all. Sorry about that. It's not the left-right offset. It's actually the end setback. So this is basically setting how far set back this object is from the end. So in this case, this is taking this object and putting the corner point on the very end here. What you want to do is you want to set that end setback to 2 inches. And then if you update that, you can see how it tells it, oh, okay, go from 2 inches from the end is where we're going to start our objects. And you can see how it adjusted the spacing when we did that. So now you've got this 2x4 stud wall object that you can click and add in here. So if you just wanted to stop here, you could click this build assembly option and then click a couple times, and you can see how it's building this wall and it's spacing all your objects at 24 inches just like this. So as you extend your wall, it's adding studs in there. As you take your wall back, it's bringing them back. So now you've got kind of your stud framed wall in here. Well, so the next thing we're going to want to do is we're going to want to add some 3/4 inch sheathing to one side of the wall. So basically what you're going to do is the sheathing is going to be, both the sheathing and the drywall are going to be profiles on here, because again, you want that to extrude all the way along the length of this face. And so all you're going to do is you're just going to come in here and you're just going to draw, probably right here for right now, you're basically going to draw a profile for plywood. So you're just going to draw a rectangle. You're going to make it, we'll call it 5/8 inch thick. Then we'll close it just like this. We'll go ahead and move it out of the way for now. I'm just using, I was just using that wall as kind of like a guide point right there. And so what we're going to do is we're going to add a profile for this. And so all that means is you're going to double click to select this little 3/4 or 5/8 inch object that you drew, and then just click add. And we're just going to call this plywood and hit OK. And so again, we're going to set this to the bottom right. So now if you draw this, you can see what it's going to do is it's going to create a 5/8 inch sheet object right here. But what we're going to do is we're going to do something a little special on this one. We're going to come in here and we're actually going to change the material, and probably to do that we need to go ahead and put this material in the model. So what you're going to do is you're going to go to your materials section of your tray, go down to wood, and you're going to select, where is it? Wood, plywood, knots. And you're just going to apply that material to this object just like this. And then when you apply that material to this object, what you can do is it'll show up in this list, and you can select that wood plywood knots piece. Well, now when you bring this in, it's going to have that material applied to it, just like this. So it's basically extruding a plywood material along your face. So now we've kind of created our plywood sheathing object. We're going to go ahead and save it. So we'll just call this plywood sheathing. It's like this. And then remember, all we need to do is come into our profile builder and add an object called plywood sheathing. And then you're just going to come in here and you're just going to select that in the same way that you selected it before. So come in here, you need to find your folder, select that folder, and then click plywood sheathing and hit OK. And so you can see what that does in your object right here is it adds plywood to your object. So if I go and click on this and click this apply assembly attributes, you can see it adds that plywood to this face. And what you need to remember is we need to offset this a little bit. So we need to set our left right offset to probably 5/8 of an inch. And then update this. You can see that move that out 5/8 of an inch. Well, now what it's doing is it's adding plywood on the face of this wall right here. So now when you come in here and you add this wall like this, it's going to frame it in, and it's also going to include the plywood on here. So the last thing we're going to do is we're going to come in here, we're actually going to add our drywall. I'm not actually going to add any insulation or anything right now. You can do that as well, but we're going to create one more profile. And I think chipboard usually comes in 5/8 inch thickness. So what we can do is we can just make a copy of this object just like this. So we can copy it over and we can apply a new material to this. So in this case, I'm actually just going to put it in as white. So we'll just apply a white material to it, and then we'll add a new object just like we did before. We'll call this one drywall sheathing. You can set your material to M100. Go ahead and set your insertion point just like we did before, and we'll just go ahead and save that. So save your object as drywall sheathing. Yep, and it's going to bring that board in. So we'll go back to our assembly manager, click the plus button, and add the drywall sheathing item out of your folder. It's like this. Go ahead and hit that OK button. You can call this drywall sheathing. And you're probably going to have to set your left-right offset to, so you're going to have to set your offset for your drywall to 1.25 inches, just like this. So that'll get it outside of your plywood sheathing on this wall. So now you can click on this object and click update. And so now you've got a layer in here of chipboard, and you've also got a layer in here of plywood on one side of your wall. So you're just going to come in here and you're going to add one more. You're going to do the same thing. You're going to select that drywall sheathing and hit OK. We're going to call this drywall back of wall, just like this. And then remember, what we're going to have to do on this one is we're going to have to set our left-right offset to -4 because we want it to show up on the other side of our wall. So you can go ahead and apply that, and you can see what that did is that offset this to the outside of this wall just like this. So now you've got this wall assembly that's got stud framing, it's got plywood sheathing, and it's got drywall sheathing on one side of the wall. So now what you could do if you wanted to is you could go ahead and set a path for your interior partitions just like this. So if you wanted a wall that went along these partitions, what you could do is you could select this path and then go down here and click this build along path. And what it'll do is it'll build your smart wall in here. So, and you can come in here and you can hide all your drywall if you want to. You can hide all your plywood so you can actually see what these faces are. Then you can come back in here and unhide them. So unhide all, just like that. Well, now what you can do is you can actually generate quantities out of this object. So you can come in here to the quantifier object. Make sure you have this selected so it doesn't pull everything in your model in. But you can just do a component report in here. Make sure this report child objects is selected, and then just click this plus button to run the report. And what that's going to do is that'll give you a count of your vertical studs. It'll give you an overall length of your top plates and your bottom plates, just like this. So you can get length of 2x4. It'll give you the face area of your plywood sheathing, just like this. It'll also give you the total surface area, so that'll probably give you the front, back, top, and bottom, so be a little careful with that one. You probably just want this total area. And then it'll also give you the area of your drywall sheathing, just like this. And if you really needed to, you could I think you can associate costs with these objects as well. I'm not 100% sure how to do that, but you can actually do like a full estimate in here if you really wanted to. So anyway, that's basically the process you're going to follow to create your own wall assemblies. You can do the same thing with foundation walls. You can do the same thing to create fences. Once you understand that the profiles are what goes along the length of the wall and the components are what get copied, then it gets really easy to come in here and create your own assemblies. This is actually a really cool extension. So anyway, that's where I'm going to wrap up today's show. Leave a comment below. Let me know what you thought. Do you have any ideas for how to use this? Do you like this extension? I'd just love to hear what you guys think about this. As always, if you like this video, please remember to click that like button down below. If you're new around here, remember to click that subscribe button for new SketchUp content every week. Please consider supporting me on Patreon. As you can see, some of these extensions are not free, and every little bit helps to just help me keep bringing you great SketchUp content. In any case, I really appreciate you taking the time to watch this, and I will catch you in the next video. Thanks, guys.